Coworkers filed a petition to kill my 10 a.m. start. One binder of receipts and call logs flipped the room and forced HR to keep the policy. Tap like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell. A petty office revolt learns why receipts and off-ramps beat gossip. The building smelled like burned coffee and carpet shampoo the morning my schedule became everyone's favorite rumor. My manager had moved my start to 10 a.m. after I took guardianship for my niece. The agreement lived in a short email and a signed accommodation note. Must be nice, someone said by the elevators. I answered with work. Dashboards up, tickets cleared, air handlers humming like bees in the ceiling. I also saved artifacts because paper listens when people do not. I printed the accommodation note, clipped a screenshot of our timecard portal that shows my 10 to 6 line, and slid both into a sleeve labeled incidents. By lunch, 2 desk neighbors tried to draft me into a debate framed as a joke. We all have lives, one said. Why do you get to stroll in late? I trade mornings for evenings and I answer 911 pages when the building is dark, I said. The copy room breathed warm toner. The floor smelled like lemon cleaner. At my desk I wrote 3 words on a card. Identify, establish, present, and slid it behind a tab labeled practice so my temper would touch verbs before pride. A red light on my phone blinked. A team lead claiming I leave early and cover nothing. I saved the audio, transcribed the line in neutral language, and stapled it under the timecard print. In the afternoon my manager met me in a glass room that smelled like dry marker. We will do this in the right room, he said. I touched the sleeve with the signed note and felt the groove where his pen had paused. The elevator chimed. The carpet swallowed sound. A whisper sharpened into unfair. I set the recorder on my desk, pressed the red I once so memory would not wobble, and waited for the petition I could already smell on the warm printer down the hall. By the next week, the rumor learned my name. A team lead tested it at stand-up, the kind of fairness speech that always asks someone else to bleed. Why does she get 10 a.m.? he said. I kept my face still and my fingers busy. I pulled service metrics from the dashboard, tickets closed, SLA hits, after-hours pages answered, and highlighted the lines where output spiked after 10. I taped a print near my monitor and filed a copy under practice with a sticky flag labeled outcomes over optics. Then I asked the lead for coffee so we could say true things without an audience. The break room smelled like burned beans and citrus soap. I am here until 6 and often later, I said. We are here at 8, he said. Then you know who answers the pager at midnight, I said. He smiled like a man auditioning for a promotion. We need standard hours. I wrote his words in my notebook and circled the phrase standard hours because phrases like that like to return wearing badges. On the way back I stopped at the copier and printed a 1-page timeline that translated my week into verbs, deploy, patch, page answered, and slid it into incidents. Near the elevators I passed 3 petitioners bent over a draft with 12 blanks for names. The paper smelled like hot toner and certainty. I did not interrupt. I opened our timecard portal, captured a second screenshot that shows after-hours approvals with my initials, and filed the image behind the first. That night at home, the apartment tasted like dry heat and tea. I prepared a small 1-page brief for my manager, accommodation note, timecards, performance graph, and a paragraph that named the cost if we copied my life onto everyone else's. At the bottom, I drew a tiny square labeled Fair Choice and set the brief on his chair before I left. Down the hall, the printer exhaled again, and this time the floor picked up the whisper and made it sound like policy. The first crack arrived as policy spoken from the gut. In a listening session, the lead stood with a box of tissues like a podium and performed the grievance. She strolls in late, leaves early, and we cover her mess, he said. HR asked me to respond. I opened a clear sleeve and laid 3 artifacts on the table. The accommodation note with a date spelled in words, a screenshot of the timecard portal that shows 10 to 6, and a tidy SLA graph with after-hours spikes. Start at 10 by agreement. Output above baseline. Coverage shared, I said. The room smelled like dry carpet. The projector fan hissed. A manager from another team coughed into his sleeve and asked, "Why not one start for everyone?" "Because sameness is not fairness," I said. "Because coverage after 5 is not a rumor." I followed with an off-ramp in plain type. Keep my start at 10, post a written coverage rota that pays late hours, and publish a 1-page rule about flexible starts for caregiving with HR approval so the next parent does not have to stand here. "We will consider," HR said. The lead smiled at the wall. After the meeting, I walked the quiet corridor and listened to the building breathe. At my desk, the red light blinked again. Another voicemail, same claim. I transcribed it without adjectives and printed a small strip I titled Repeating Claim. then stapled it behind incidents so the pattern could not float away. My manager stopped by my chair. "You kept it calm," he said. "We are not done," I said, and watched him place a sealed envelope with my name on it under my keyboard. It was a calendar invite for Friday at 2 with a simple subject line: Policy Review. The elevator chimed down the hall, and for the first time all week the sound felt like a starting pistol instead of a bell. Escalation showed up in printer heat and signatures. A petition with 12 names landed in HR's inbox, and a copy appeared on my chair under a sticky note that read for transparency. The subject was neat: standardized start times for team efficiency. I photographed the page for incidents and then opened our outage dashboard for the last quarter. The only red bars hugged the hours before 10 when the petitioners liked to cover. I highlighted those bars, printed the image, and filed it under practice with a caption that read measure before mandate. My manager called a pre-meeting in a glass room that smelled like dry marker and lime hand gel. "If they force one start," he said, "the pager after 5 will starve. Then we will show the cost in daylight," I said. I assembled a 4-page packet: accommodation, timecard images, outage bars, and a draft rota for late coverage that spreads the work and pays for it. In the margins I wrote the verbs out loud: identify, establish, present, and boxed a tiny square labeled fair choice. On the way back to my chair I passed the copier again and watched the petitioners count names. One whispered, "We will make her play by the rules." I breathed out once, long, and dialed facilities to borrow a small floor stand. At my desk I slid our laminated flexible work policy into the stand and placed it by the service counter where people check out laptop locks. The sign smelled faintly of warm plastic. A support engineer paused, read, and nodded. In the corner the red light on my recorder blinked a quiet pulse, and somewhere a printer warmed for the last time before Friday at 2. I added a 5th page with a simple math line that spelled the overtime budget in words because numbers without words let denial hide, and I wanted the room to feel the bill land on the table. Friday at 2 tasted like dry coffee and carpet dust. The room filled with perfume and resolve. Petitioners sat in a single block, chairs tight as a row of teeth. HR read a summary and invited comments. The lead spoke first. "No more exceptions," he said. "One start. One standard." I kept my hands flat and slid my packet forward. "Documented, then documented for everyone," I said. I laid the rota that pays late coverage, the outage bars that glow before 10, and the accommodation note with its quiet signature. "If sameness is the rule," I added, "then sameness touches the pager after 5, the weekly maintenance window at 9 p.m., and the on-call phone on holiday weekends. We can post the schedule today." A murmur moved like air under a door. HR turned to my manager. "Can you run the rota?" "Yes," he said. "It is ready." The lead lifted his chin. "We asked for one start," he said. "You asked for one standard," I said. "This is the rest of that sentence." I passed around a short stack screenshot of the timecard portal with after-hours approvals, a print of the service desk call log from last Sunday night, and a photo of the on-call phone docked by security with my initials on the sign outline. The lead's smile thinned. "So now we all stay late?" he asked. "Now the late work is seen, shared, and paid," I said. "And my 10 a.m. stays by the agreement you already signed." HR read the decision in a calm voice and slid a copy toward the petitioners. "Acknowledged," the lead said, but the word landed without a place to sit. The projector fan sighed. A pen rattled. The door latch clicked like it knew a crown was about to feel heavy. I slipped the recorder into my pocket and felt the red eye cool as the room wrote the next scene for us. I wrote the decision like a clean flight plan and kept it small enough to fit in one palm. Step 1, publish a late coverage rota that pays evenings in plain words and sets who owns the pager after 5. Step 2, restore shared logins with an access ledger that stamps changes and locks any schedule edits behind dual approvals. Step 3, post a 1-page flexible starts policy that HR signs for caregivers and on-call coverage so sameness stops pretending to be fairness. I added an off-ramp that left dignity in the room. The lead withdraws the petition, signs the rota, and posts a short note acknowledging the agreement. In exchange, I do not file a grievance, and we call this a process upgrade, not a win. I printed the offer on warm paper that smelled faintly of toner and lemon. A calendar invite screenshot for Friday at 2 sat on top. A coverage rota printout and a policy one-sheet lived behind the tab marked practice. "Door first," I whispered. The open office hummed like a low hive. The elevator bell chimed a bright note. The petition's edge curled where hands had pressed too hard. I slid the offer into his inbox and taped a small square on my notebook that read fair choice so my thumb would feel the promise before my jaw remembered the sting. Across the aisle, the red light on my recorder blinked once, patient as a heartbeat. My manager walked past with a folder that smelled like rain and said, "At 2 we let the room speak." And the room felt like it had just cleared its throat to answer. Preparation tasted like printer heat and old coffee. I built a packet with a one-line index, then stacked receipts in the order tired eyes prefer. Accommodation note, timecard portal screenshot with after-hours approvals, SLA graph with evening spikes, petition photo, coverage rota, off-ramp letter. I added a roll call sign-in sheet and a meeting agenda whose 4 lines read like rails. Motion, second, discussion, decision. HR emailed a neutral room confirmation. I printed the message and clipped it to incident so time could not pretend to be fog. The carpet smelled like carpet shampoo. A label printer purred. The ceiling vents murmured cool air across my knuckles. I ran a 5-minute huddle under low lights. Log claims exactly. Photograph any moved sign. Write times as words. And set a bowl of mints by the packet stack because courage can taste like chalk. A junior asked, "Do we clap if it goes our way?" "We document," I said. And the words sat in the air like a level that has found true. I slid spare batteries beside the recorder, practiced the sentence that keeps fire out of my mouth. "We are here for safety, not spectacle," and tucked a spare policy 1 sheet under the projector, so no one could hide behind mystery. The clock above the glass wall blinked toward 2. HR's footsteps scratched the hall. The door handle turned with a soft metallic click that sounded like a hinge remembering what it is for. The room smelled like dry marker and citrus gel. The projector fan breathed warm air. HR took the head of the table and nodded at my packet. I set the recorder by the water pitcher, clicked the red eye, and spoke in verbs. "Identify, establish, present," I said, laying the accommodation note beside the timecard screenshot where 10 to 6 sits with after-hours approvals. Then the SLA graph that spikes after 5. The lead performed a smile. "1 standard start," he said. "Team cohesion." HR tilted a pen. "Receipts." I slid the petition photo across, then the coverage rota that pays late work in simple lines, then the off-ramp letter with the little box labeled fair choice. "You can walk through this door," I said, "or we record a denial and escalate under policy." The ceiling vent whispered. The glass wall reflected pale faces. The citrus smell rode the air like a steady hand. My manager added a small human line. "The pager does not ring at 8. It rings at 9, 10, and midnight." I placed one more artifact, a pager log printout with calls spelled in words, so the room could hear the hours even with its eyes. HR cleared her throat. "Decision in this room," she said. "Either accept the rota and flexible policy, or we publish a finding on interference with assigned accommodation." The lead's jaw went still. "We will not sign exceptions," he said. "Then you will sign coverage," I answered. And the pen hovered above the page like a bird about to choose a wire. Consequences arrived as paper that chose verbs over villains. HR read a short finding into the minutes. Documented accommodation remains in force. Coverage rota adopted and posted. After-hours work shared and paid. Any attempt to undermine an accommodation routes to HR as a breach of policy. The meeting minutes draft slid across the table smelling like warm toner. The lead's signature pressed shallow and careful. My manager's name landed with a small, confident line. A separate memo put the petition to bed. Standardized start times recast as standardized coverage transparency. The policy 1 sheet went live on the intranet with version numbers. Facilities framed a printed copy by the service counter where badge lanyards clack. A notice photo joined practice with a sticky flag labeled posted. HR asked the lead to complete a short coaching plan on accommodations law. No public shaming, no speeches, just study and a check-in. The open office smelled like lemon and plastic as a new coverage rota hit inboxes at dusk. A junior pinged me, "Thank you for making the late work scene." And the line glowed on my screen like a small, honest lamp. I filed a quiet email to the team. No victory lap, only rails and thanks. And taped a tiny card inside the binder that said mirror the rule, not the person. The building settled. A printer sighed. The pager dock light glowed steady by security. HR capped her pen, looked at the lead and said, "We expect the same professionalism you demand." And the red eye on my recorder blinked once as if to underline the sentence we could all live with next. Quiet returned in shapes you can pick up and keep. The pager rang at 9. The rota carried it to hands that had signed for late. My start stayed 10 by the note everyone had read. The open office air tasted like coffee instead of resentment. The timecard portal showed approvals with initials spelled out. The service desk wore a clean coverage calendar with weeks named in words. The lead stopped auditioning for a promotion inside my hours and started counting the lines that actually keep lights on. He sent a short sentence that said apology, not theater, and it read like a grown-up at last. I printed a one-line lesson and slid it behind practice. Repair before revenge, receipts before speeches, right room before crowd, and pinned a second copy by the on-call phone cradle so fingers would see it at midnight. The building hummed a steady white noise that felt like trust learning to breathe again. If you ever face a petition that dresses envy as fairness, pick verbs over villains, offer one real door out, and let the right room read the hours out loud. What would you have done here? Argue for sameness, or build rails that pay the dark hours without burning the mornings? And where do you draw the line between empathy and boundaries when assigned accommodation meets a paper crown? Drop your take in the comments, and thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, and ring the bell so you never miss the next story, and stay fantastic while you fix rooms that outlast moods.